Mabuhay! My name is Hartlin Cortez, and together with my groupmates, Jen de Guzman, Jennifer de la Cruz, and Marmica Gampang, we are excited to present our topic for today. So we will be discussing Chapter 4, which is Designing Meaningful Performance-Based Assessment. We hope this presentation will provide you with valuable insights and practical strategies that will help you with your learning practices. Let's dive in. So designing performance assessment entails critical processes which start from the tasks that the teacher wants to assess. It is a well-designed performance assessment that helps the student to see the connection between the knowledge, skills, and abilities they have learned from the classroom, including the experiences which help them to construct their own meaning of knowledge. So the following steps will guide you in developing a meaningful performance assessment, both process and product, that will match to the desired learning outcomes. So number 1, defining the purpose of assessment. So the first step in designing performance-based assessment is to define the purpose of assessment. So defining the purpose and target of assessment provides information on what students need to be performed in a given task. So the purpose of assessment refers to the specific goals or intentions behind evaluating students' learning and performance. It answers the question, why is this assessment being conducted? So by defining its purpose, teachers can clearly identify what they want to achieve or measure, such as understanding students' progress, identifying strengths and weaknesses, or evaluating how well students can apply knowledge and skills in real-life situations. So here's some basic questions which teachers ask in determining possible learning competencies. We have here number 1, what important cognitive skills or attributes do I want my students to develop? Number 2, what social and affective skills or attributes do I want my students to develop? 3, what metacognitive skills do I want my students to develop? 4, what types of problems do I want my students to be able to solve? And last, what concepts and principles do I want my students to be able to apply? So next, we have here the 4 types of learning target used in performance assessment. So number 1, we have deep understanding or knowledge. So this focuses on what students need to know, such as facts, concepts, principles, or theories. So this assesses students' understanding of content or subject matter. So the idea is to involve students meaningfully in hands-on activities for extended periods of time so that their understanding is rich and more extensive than what can be attained by more conventional instruction and traditional paper and pencil assessments. So next is reasoning. So it is essential with performance assessment as the students demonstrate skills and construct products. Typically, students are given a problem to solve or are asked to make a decision or other outcome. Example, students will analyze the causes of climate change. With this, students will be able to know how to use their knowledge to think critically or solve problems. Next is we have skills, so what students can do or perform. In addition to logical and reasoning skills, students are required to demonstrate communication, presentation, and psychomotor skills. So, psychomotor skills refer to the physical abilities or movements that involve the coordination of the brain and the body to perform specific tasks. So last, we have products or what students create as evidence of learning. So these are the completed works such as term papers, projects, and other assignments in which students use their knowledge and skills. So now let's proceed to the process and product-oriented performance-based assessment. So we have here process-oriented performance-based assessment. So this type of assessment focuses on the procedures or the steps that the students follow to complete a task or solve a problem. So the primary goal is to evaluate how students arrive at their results and whether they apply the appropriate knowledge, skills, and strategies. So it emphasizes the learning process over the final output. It assesses skills like critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and problem solving. and it provides feedback to help students improve their methods or approaches. Examples: observing how students conduct a science experiment, or assessing a student's ability to organize ideas during brainstorming session, and evaluating how a student solves a math problem step by step. And lastly, we have product-oriented performance-based assessment. So this type of assessment evaluates the final output or tangible result that students produce as evidence of their learning. So it focuses on the quality and accuracy of the product. So it emphasizes the outcome or the final result of the task, assesses the application of knowledge and skills in creating meaningful outputs, and measures whether the product meets specific standards or expectations. Examples: writing an essay or report, creating a model, artwork, or project, and completing a working prototype of a machine. So after defining the purpose of assessment, the next step in designing meaningful performance-based assessment is to identify performance tasks. So performance tasks are designed to assess students' achievement of specific learning targets. They can be structured with clear instructions and criteria, or unstructured or open-ended. So having a clear understanding of purpose of assessment, the next step is to identify performance tasks which measure the learning target you are about to assess. Some targets imply that the task should be structured, others require unstructured tasks. So here are some questions that should be answered in designing tasks. First, we have here, what ranges of tasks do the learning targets imply? Which parts of the task should be structured and to what degree? Does each task require students to perform all the important elements implied by the learning targets? Do the tasks allow me to assess the achievement dimensions I need to assess? What must I tell students about the task and its scoring to communicate to them what they need to perform? Will students with different ethnic and social backgrounds interpret my task appropriately? So performance tasks are activities that measure students' achievement of learning targets. These tasks are not just about recalling facts, they require students to apply their knowledge, skills, and abilities in meaningful ways. For example, instead of asking students to simply solve a math problem on paper, a performance task might involve applying their math skills to plan a shopping budget. So to help students understand what is expected, we need a clear task description. According to Macmillan 2007, this includes content and skills to be assessed, a description of the activities students will perform, whether it's individual or group task, the kind of help students are allowed to receive, the resources they need, the teacher's role during the task, any administrative processes like timing and setup, clear scoring procedures for assessment. So this structured approach helps students perform confidently and fairly. So tasks, on the other hand, should be meaningful and must let the student be personally involved in doing and creating the tasks. This could be done by selecting a task which has personal meaning for most of the students. So choose a task in which students have the ability to demonstrate knowledge and skills from classroom activities or other similar ways. These tasks should be of high value, worth teaching to, and worth learning as well. So in creating performance tasks, one should specify the learning targets, the criteria by which you will evaluate performance, and the instructions for completing the task. Include also the time needed to complete the tasks. Be sure students understand how long a response you are expecting. Some learning targets can be assessed in a relatively short period of 20 to 30 minutes, but it also depends on the learning targets which necessitate a longer time. Examples are conducting an opinion survey and gathering of data for research which need more time. So participation of groups must be considered also in crafting performance tasks. Some tasks require cooperative or collaborative learning or in-group tasks. So that would be all for my part. The continuation of the second step and the other steps in designing meaningful performance-based assessment will be discussed with my group mates. Thank you and stay tuned.
Good day everyone, I'm Jennifer De La Cruz from BSN English. In this section, I'll be discussing suggestions for constructing performance tasks. So first is focus on learning outcomes that require complex cognitive skills and student performances. Performance tasks should assess skills that require higher order thinking and cannot be measured easily with traditional tests. Second is select or develop tasks that represent both the content and the skills that are central to important learning outcomes. So we'll need to reflect content and skills. Tasks should align with both the subject matter and the desired learning outcomes. Third is minimize the difference of task performance on skills that are relevant to intended purpose of the assessment task. Fourth is provide the necessary scaffolding for students to be able to understand the task and what is expected. So minimize irrelevant skills that the task be primarily focused on the learning outcome. Avoid unnecessary complexities. Fifth is construct task direction so that the student's task is clearly indicated. So students need clear instructions and support to understand the task and what is expected of them. Six is clearly communicate performance expectations in terms of the criteria by which the performances will be judged. So ambiguous instructions can lead to confusion and unfair assessments. Students should be informed about the criteria that will be used to evaluate their work. Following these guidelines, educators can create effective performance tasks that accurately assess student learning and promote deeper understanding. Performance-based assessment tasks in education go beyond traditional testing to evaluate a student's ability to apply knowledge and skills in real-world scenarios. These are categorized into two main types. First is process-oriented tasks. These tasks emphasize the thinking and problem-solving process involved in completing a task. So an example given is a task where students devise a plan to help a friend with a difficult situation, assessing their problem-solving and communication skills. And the second one is the product-oriented task. These tasks focus on the final product created by the student. An example is a task where students plan a natural beverage for their community event, demonstration where and creativity, planning, and practical application of knowledge. By using performance-based tasks, educators can gain a more comprehensive understanding of a student's learning and abilities compared to traditional tests that primarily assess rote memorization. Now, in crafting performance tasks, we can use checklists for writing performance tasks. So this checklist provides a set of questions to ensure the task is well designed. So there are also key considerations which include first is content and skills. Does the task assess essential knowledge and skills? Also, authenticity, is the task real world and engaging? For teachability, can the task be taught effectively within the time and resources available? And feasibility, is the task manageable for both students and teachers, as well as clarity? Is the task clearly defined and understood? Or if the task is challenging, does the task encourage higher order thinking? And for the scoring criteria, are clear criteria for evaluating student performance included? And lastly, we have the constraints. Are any limitations or restrictions for completing the task specified? So these are the guidelines in crafting performance tasks so that we can come up with effective evaluation. Developing scoring scheme. I will be discussing on the importance of using various tools to assess students' performance, which emphasizes that the options of the assessment tools should be aligned with the specific task or performance being evaluated. First, let us know what is scoring scheme. A scoring scheme is a set of rules that evaluates performance against a set of criteria. We'll use such rules to come up with the most appropriate and effective evaluation. Okay, for our key assessment tools, which include anecdotal records or a short informal notes of students' behavior or progress. When interviews as a teacher, we can have one-on-one conversations to our students in order to gather information about their understanding to diagnose their strengths and weaknesses. We can also use direct observations, which involves checklists or Likert scale. It is a rating system that measures attitudes, opinions, and behaviors of the students. So this is an example of Likert scale. Using this will be able us to get opinions of the students. Moreover, we can use rubrics to assess students' performance. So as we all know, rubrics serve as a basis to easily evaluate students' performance. It is a scoring tool that identifies the different criteria relevant to the task and to the learning outcomes or to the objectives so that we can identify areas for improvement. As an assessment tool has a three important features. First is evaluative criteria. These are the specific aspect of the work that will be assessed. For example, clarity, organization, accuracy, and so on. This is the description of qualitative differences for evaluating criteria. It refers to the performance levels of the students. Based on a figure, each criteria is broken down into different levels of performance. For example, excellent, good, fair, and needs improvement. Lastly, we have indication of whether a holistic or analytic scoring approach is to be used. On the other hand, with the use of rubrics, we can able to have a structured and transparent way to assess student learning, ensuring fairness and consistency in evaluation. Let's dig deeper on the scoring approach or the types of rubrics. What is the difference between the two? Analytic rubrics break down a task into specific skills and criteria. Each skill is scored separately, giving detailed feedback on strengths and weaknesses. Based on the rubric presented, this rubric is for an oral presentation, assesses characterization, preparedness, speaking clearly, and volume. Each with different performance level helps students to understand exactly where they need to improve. However, holistic rubric assesses overall students' performance or the quality of their performance. So, based on the figure again, the rubric uses a single score to rate factors like clarity, evidence, organization, delivery, and audience engagement. The scores range from 0 or no presentation to 5 equivalent to excellent, providing a quick overview of the student's performance. Rubrics are composed of task description, skill, dimension, and description of dimensions. For the task description, these are the tasks taken from assignments, presentation, and offers. The scale is the different levels of performance such as excellent, competent, and needs work. We will need to weigh the student's performance or output for fair evaluation. Lastly is the dimension. Based on what we observe in the figure, dimension has a specific criteria used to assess the task of the students and also serve as a basis as well for evaluating the students' performance. It also includes the 5 dimensions, namely the knowledge, thinking, communication, and so on. So each dimension has a weight assigned to it and also rated of excellent, competent, and needs work.
This is the continuation. So now we're on to the description of dimensions. So it says here, dimensions should contain description of the level of performance as standard of excellence accompanied with examples. So this allows both the teachers and the students to identify the levels of expectation and what dimension must be given an emphasis. So here's we have an example. Okay, so each level includes a detailed description and illustrates examples to ensure transparency and consistency in grading. So these level are these excellent, competent, and the needs work. So it breaks down the assessment into key areas such as knowledge or understanding, thinking or inquiry, communication, use of visual aids, and presentation skills. So as you can see here, above and here. So another example is a rubric should contain a mechanism of assigning scores for each output or performance. A numerical value is assigned at each level of performance. So this numerical value that we are referring to is this 25. From the levels of 4, 3, 2, 1, we have 25, 18.75, 12.50, and 6.25. That's how it is. So another, we have an example again. It is the dialogue or the conversation completion rubric. So this rubric assesses conversational skills, categorizing performance into 3 levels. So these are the needs: practical with assistant, good most of the time, skilled or independent. So it evaluates 3 key phases of a conversation. First, we have at the start of the conversation, the during the conversation, and lastly at the end of the conversation. So first, at the start of the conversation, this section focuses on initiating and setting the stage for effective communication with aspects like eye contact, initiation, turn-taking, personal space, and interruptions. Second is the during the conversation. Here, we'll assess how well you maintain eye contact, use the other person's name, stay on topic, contribute meaningfully to the discussion, and take turns speaking. Third is at the end of the conversation. It focuses on proper closure. It focuses on proper closure and politeness. Okay, that's it. And now we're on to the final stage of performance-based assessment, the rating the student's performance. So the key is objectivity and consistency, right? So we need a fair scoring system that's easy to use. So it is to be objective and consistent. Be sure that the scoring system is feasible and feasible as well. So teacher is both the observer and the rater. So often, the teacher acts as both observer and the rater, but for significant decisions involving multiple raters ensures fairness. So according to Macmillan 2007, there are 3 different common rating errors. These are the generosity error, severity error, central tendency error. So however, human judgment is prone to biases. We must be aware of common rating errors. So generosity error, where we unintentionally give higher scores than deserve. Severity error, the opposite, where scores are too low. And central tendency error, where we tend to cluster scores around the average. So another significant bias is the halo effect. So it says here that occurs when the teacher's general impression of the students affects scores given in individual traits or performance. So, to mitigate these biases, we should strive for clear criteria. We can use multiple raters and be mindful of our own potential biases. Furthermore, actively involving students in the assessment processes, allowing them to self-assess and even contribute to the development of assessment instrument can significantly improve the accuracy and fairness of the evaluation. That's all. Thank you.